Hello and welcome. This is the family webinar about our in-person learning plans. And we're just going to give about 20 to 30 seconds for people to join in. So welcome. As people are joining in, I see our numbers are going up still. So I just want to remind people, we will present this same information in Spanish tomorrow night, 5:30 to 7. We'll have a Spanish interpreter and the slides will be in Spanish as well. We are also recording this session as well as the Spanish session, and we'll send that out to families who weren't able to attend or who may want to refer to it. Okay, good. Our numbers are going up, but it's slowing down, so I think it's okay for us to get started. Again, welcome. My name is Diane Bradford. I'm the Communications and Public Relations Director for the school district. So glad you could join us tonight to hear more about our in-person learning plans. We'll focus mostly on elementary school tonight. And some of this you may have already heard and some will be new, and we have plenty of people here from the school district leadership to help answer questions at the end. The way tonight will work is we have a presentation with a few speakers to share with you some info, and then at the end we will have time for questions and comments using something called Thought Exchange. I'll walk you through it when we get there. Very easy. It'll give you a chance to share any questions or comments or observations. And then you'll have a chance to rate what other people have asked or commented about. And then we'll pause that. And then the staff will have that in front of us on the screen as part of this webinar. And then we will answer as many questions from that list as we can in the time that we have left. So, we do not have the question and answer box active because we're using Thought Exchange to capture all of those questions and comments. So, with that, I'm going to pass this over for Dr. Brynildson to kick off this evening.
Thank you, Diane. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad that you're here attending the Family Town Hall. We might have some staff that have joined as well, so welcome. I just want to start off by thanking the families for all you have done to support your students during distance learning. So thank you, thank you. We really appreciate your support. One thing that we did not do in the staff webinar or town hall was to introduce the people that you see on the screen. So could you just introduce yourself and give what your title is? I'll start with myself. My name is Allison Brynildson. I am the superintendent for the district. Brooke, we'll go to you next.
Hello, my name is Brooke Trissler. I'm the Chief Technology Officer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is...
Go ahead, Maria.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Maria Peña Mercado, and I serve as the Executive Director for Student Learning and Partnerships.
Hi, I'm Patty Dowd, Executive Director of Business Services. Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen Mosaker, Executive Director of District Support Services.
You already heard from me, Diane Bradford, Communications Director.
Awesome. And we will have about 3 people joining us a little bit later to help answer questions. So let's start with the land acknowledgement. So the Mukilteo School District acknowledges that we gather on ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial. We respect this place and honor the sacred spiritual connection to the land, water, and its people, past, present, and future. By acknowledging these lands and their original indigenous inhabitants, we reach back to our own indigeneity and reflect on the impacts of colonialism and the lands from which all of our people come. We are connected to our ancestors through this connection to land, for land is what connects us all. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the traditional people of this territory, the Snohomish and Tulalip tribes, for their enduring care and protection of the land in which we currently share. So this first slide is really just a review of how we have approached reopening schools to in-person instruction. So if you've attended previous town halls that we have done, you've heard me say this before. This is just a reminder that returning to in-person learning has always been our goal. Health and safety is a top priority for our students as well as staff and families. We have a cautious and thoughtful approach. We continue to have key inputs from the Snohomish Health District in the Department of Health. And then I always say change is our new constant. So we need to be flexible and adaptable as we get new and updated information. So Diane and I, when we were talking about what are planning for the town halls, we went back to our last town hall, which was October 13th and 14th. And at that time, we announced that we were going to put a pause on our tentative plans to return students to in-person instruction on October 26th. And that was really the recommendation of the health department during that time, was to put a pause on returning full grade levels because our case rates were increasing at such a rapid pace. So Diane and I just wrote down all the things that have changed since our last town hall. And I just want to refer to them real quickly because it puts into perspective how much new information comes at us and how, again, we have to be adaptable. So case counts in our county went from double digits to triple digits and skyrocketed through November and December. And then they've been on a decline for the last 2 months. The Department of Health updated their decision tree, and that was the kind of the what's the word I'm looking for, is what we would follow in terms of when we can reopen schools and at what grade levels. So the decision tree that was originally made was very conservative, but because new information came to light, the decision tree was drastically changed to allow more students to return in person, even though we had higher COVID case counts. And that was released mid-December. The governor changed his Safe Start plan and replaced it with Healthy Washington, which had different metrics and a different phase-in plan. That really didn't pertain to schools per se. However, it did affect some of our activities such as athletics. We saw across the state and across the nation new data being released that schools were not super spreaders as long as we followed the health and safety protocols. So really schools were safe to transition to in-person. Then we had vaccinations that arrived and then a shortage of vaccinations. And now we're back on track to get more of our community vaccinated if they choose to. And then we reached a tentative agreement with the Teachers Association. And so it's important to note that we being management have the right to return students to in-person instruction, but our union has the right, the teachers union has the right to bargain the working conditions. So we worked collaboratively over the last several months, and we did reach what we call an MOA, an agreement of things that need to be in place to return students to in-person. But that MOA is primarily only for preschool through 5th grade. So we have some elements in that MOA that pertain to secondary, but we do have more work to do before we can transition secondary students back. So we get a lot of questions from secondary staff and secondary parents that want to know what are the plans to return our middle school and high school students. And please know we have not forgotten about them. We are working diligently to get our 1st grade level back, which will be 2nd grade. And then as that goes well, we'll pivot back to planning for secondary. And I really recognize the grace and patience that our families have extended us, and we thank you for that. So in-person timeline that we're going to share is really for the younger elementary school grades. So students that were in K-5 specialized programs returned to in-person on January 25th. Preschool started on Monday. Our ECAP students will start March 1st, and then March 8th will be our 1st full grade level. That will be 2nd grade, because we chose 2nd grade because they're familiar with school. Kindergartners have never been on site. And so When I go into kindergarten classrooms via Zoom, they don't know any different. Actually, they're very cute and excited and seem to be very engaged. So we really wanted to start with a group of students that knew the routines of school already. And then, if you could go back, then we have first grade, March 22nd, and then kindergarten at the end of March. So as you know, we sent out a survey to families and we also surveyed staff. We did that at the beginning of the school year, but the survey data was quite, I would say, very old and outdated because we did not paint a picture of what school would actually look like for our students and our staff. So we resurveyed and we asked the following questions. Do students want to remain in a distance learning model only for the remainder of the year? Would you like to come back in person? And by in person, we mean 3 hours in the morning, and then students would return home or to daycare, and then they'd continue their learning in the afternoon. I'll talk more about that in the next few slides. Teachers also had the choice of keeping their class and doing both in-person instruction and remote learning at the same time. So if Diane is a teacher, a second grade teacher, and she has 15 kids right now, and 10 of her kids chose to return to in-person, Diane would return to in-person, teach those 10 kids, and the 5 kids that are left on her class would live stream into her classroom and stay remote because they wanted to be remote. So she'd keep her same kids as throughout the year she's had, and she would do both simultaneously in person and remote at the same time. That was a choice for teachers. And then there was a choice for students, which was they preferred either model as long as they could follow their teacher if possible. So the survey results, we pulled these are from last Thursday night. And at that time we had about 2,600 responses. So we were missing 18%. We've been working towards getting more of that data, of course, this week. But last Thursday, we had 18% that had not yet responded. 34% of our students chose to return in person. 27% wanted in person or wanted to stay in distance learning for the year. And then 21% said either option, we just would love to stay with our teacher if possible. So we have survey results for our K2 teachers as well. So this represents 185 K2 classroom teachers, and 4% of our teachers said we'll go wherever you need us. So just put us where you think the need is. 56% preferred to come in person. 22% said that they wanted to keep their current class of students, which means they would do in-person and remote at the same time. And then 18% preferred distance learning only. So the school day preview. So we get asked a lot of questions about why we chose a 4-day-a-week model for 3 hours a day in person. And many districts around us and across the state chose what's called a AB day model. So their students would be in person for 2 days, and then they would remain in distance learning for 3 days. And we felt it was very important for teachers to see their students for shorter amount of times, but for 4 days in a row. So, or not 4 days in a row, but 4 out of the 5 days during the week. And so the day will be 3 hours in person in the morning, either 9 or 9:45, and we'll get you this information, families, by Friday, late afternoon, Friday evening. You'll find out what your student's assignment is, what their school start time is, and who their teacher is. But it's 3 days, 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. Wednesdays remain the same as they are now. And then after the in-person learning, students would go home and finish their learning off-site because they still have like a 5.5-hour student day. So another reason why we chose this model is because of cohorting. So the recommendations from the health department is students should stay together in cohorts or groups. So when students are in person, class sizes will not be more than 15, and that group, that class, that cohort will travel together and stay together throughout their time in person. So that's another safety precaution that we're taking. Diane, you want to go to the next slide? I think I might have already talked about some of this. So again, it's 3 hours in person in the morning. If you choose to do that, your start time will be 9 or 9:45. Distance learning in the afternoon for everybody. Meals are going to be grab and go. So students will be provided their breakfast and lunch after the student day is over, and they take those and eat those off site. The movement, there will be movement and outdoor mask breaks may be taken. So that will be for the teacher to decide. And then supplies and technology, this is a really important one because we don't want students to have to bring their supplies to and from school, and supplies includes their computer. So students can leave that stuff at home, and then when they return to in-person instruction, there will be another computer for them to use in their classroom. They will also have a bin of their own supplies available to them on their desk. So they will not have to share supplies, nor will they have to transport supplies. Diane, do you think I missed anything with that?
I think that you covered all the things I can think of, but I think that we can certainly talk about, if questions come up, we'll certainly answer them at the end.
Got it.
Maybe, do you want to say that breakfast, right? Breakfast will be included with the meals. So
Yep.
they'll
Yep.
all be to go.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Karen.
Thanks. So we have implemented a number of operational and safety changes to our buildings and to our facilities to improve as much as possible the safety of the environment. We use something we call a layer approach, which means we have many different actions that we can take that will help increase safety. Individually, each of them are important, but no single action will ensure a person's safety. When we layer them together, we create a much more robust safe environment. So some of these are things like staying home when sick or have symptoms. We really would like to stress to you to please keep students home when they are sick or when they have symptoms. We have daily screening and attestations for students and staff. And of course, increased emphasis on washing hands as much as possible, as well as physical distancing. We've all become a bit familiar now with needing to maintain 6 feet of distance from one another, and we've implemented a lot of protocols in our buildings to support that. Face coverings or personal protective equipment, face coverings are required for students and staff in our buildings. We do have good stock, ample supplies of them for our staff, and as well, we do have masks for students when they forget them or lose them or break them during the day. We've revised our cleaning protocols to ensure we're implementing the best recommendations related to COVID-19. We've made some other operational adjustments to our facilities I'll address in just a few minutes in another slide, as well as some training protocols that we are implementing and response plans. Some of the operational adjustments that we've made in our buildings include spacing our students' desks out 6 feet apart and reducing the capacity of classrooms. We have created and deployed a number of different types of signage for both informational purposes related to COVID, as well as for directions to help support the physical distancing efforts going on in our buildings. We've made adjustments to our ventilation systems. Again, following guidance, we are increasing outside air percentages, we're upgrading filters, and we are monitoring on an ongoing basis the performance of the systems to ensure everything is functioning as it should. We've also made a number of adjustments to our transportation system. Next slide. Oh, just said all that. So next slide. Bus transportation. We have made a number of adjustments to our transportation protocols, including reducing the number of students that will be on each bus. We are loading from the back to the front in an attempt to space students out and reduce interactions. Masks, of course, are required on our bus, and drivers will have some if students don't have them. We will be driving with windows open and the vents open as much as possible to maximize airflow. Keep in mind on very windy or rainy days, depending on the weather, all of the windows may not be open, but we will be driving with some of them open. And we have implemented new procedures to clean our buses in between routes. As I mentioned, we've revised our cleaning protocols to follow Washington State Department of Health guidance. That has included acquiring and creating some new products to be used in our buildings. Every classroom has been supplied with EPA and DOH approved cleaner and disinfectant. And we've created a supply of what we're calling kid-friendly wipes. It's Department of Health approved soap and water. It's all it's in it, soap and water. In a bucket or in a tub of wipes, so that students can help as well when needed with cleaning up. We've revised our custodial duties in order to support some of the recommended and needed cleaning of highly, frequently touched points and restrooms ongoing throughout the day. We've created some classroom door hangers, little indicators that go on the classroom doors. One side is red, the other side is green. That's just a visual indicator for folks to know that the custodian has cleaned the room. In addition to that, we have created a custodial response team who we will be able to deploy to provide supplemental support to the building custodian should there be a situation where we need to do deeper cleaning. And they use a product called the EVA Clean Infection Control System, which is an electrostatic sprayer in those cases. We are developing training protocols for all of our staff. The staff will be trained before students return to school on a number of topics, including all of our COVID safety plans and response protocols and PPE, as well as our cleaning products that are available. There are also some videos and training items for families that are available on our website. And I believe Diane will be showing you the link to where you can find that information here in just a few more slides. Our district has created COVID response plans. Every building has a COVID response team that is made up of the COVID site supervisor, the building nurse, and our director of safety. They are the ones who will review each and every case that may come up and work with the Snohomish Health District to determine next steps that we need to implement. And I'm handing it to Diane.
That's me. All right. Thanks, Karen. So I want to share with you just a little bit about childcare. We will maintain those relationships we already have for childcare providers with the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club of Snohomish County. A few weeks ago, they did move to new locations in our district. So now they are now at Voyager and Explorer Middle School. And that was partly to make room for in-person learning at our elementaries once again. So if your student already attends one of those, you can count on bus transportation to and from school to those childcare locations. You can also, I want to mention bus transportation for people who are not doing childcare. We will have, and that was a question on the survey for our K through second grade families, if your student plans on using bus transportation. So hopefully if you needed it, you indicated that. And for those folks who would qualify for bus transportation, meaning you live at a distance that would qualify for busing, you should be receiving a postcard in the mail from the transportation department in the next week or two that would have your child's specific bus route information. And then we'll see how it goes. If we find that childcare expands, we would look at potentially expanding to more sites. I'm going to look here at Miss Patty Dowd. Do you have anything to add for childcare, Patty, that I may have missed?
No, Diane, I think you got it all.
Okay, all right, thanks. So a few of our next steps that we're actively working on, one of them is regular voluntary testing for some of our staff. Now we're going to start with our teachers who are required to work on site for those first groups back. So starting with the second grade teachers, preschool, our K through 5 specialized programs, we have a testing date already scheduled for next week. Once we have one of those under our belt, we are going to look at expanding that for more staff testing to offer that on a regular basis, again, on a voluntary basis for teachers and staff. We are also actively and have been actively pursuing vaccination partnerships for our staff. You may have read or seen a lot in the headlines about vaccination supply, supply flow, also about getting school staff vaccinated, and we've heard some promising things. However, we are still, of course, waiting for enough supply and for the right phase for us to be able to offer that. So it's not something that we can offer vaccinations to all of our staff now. We do have some staff that qualify based on those vaccination phases that the Department of Health has laid out. But really we're waiting. We understand it's going to be several more weeks before we get to that point to be able to even begin to offer vaccinations to more of our staff. So we've expressed our interest in finding a vaccination partner with Snohomish Health District. So hopefully something will come through here soon and we can begin to offer that vaccination for staff. We also will start regularly publishing COVID-19 information about our district, things like the number of cases and the COVID-19 landscape as we bring back more students to our schools. So that'll be on the district website. I'm going to show you where to find this in just a minute, and that'll start up next week. Also, in our next steps, we're already planning for grades 3 through 5. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll send survey out to 3 through 5, both staff and for families, to find out their plans, whether they're coming back for in-person learning, plan to stay with remote learning, or if either option would be fine. And for families, it could be that they would prefer to stay with a teacher if possible, and either option might work. So watch for that in the next few weeks if you're through grades 3 through 5. Also, we are expanding individual and small group in-person learning at the secondary school, so middle and high school, doing that still in the small group level. And of course, as we've said all along, right, you will always give at least 2 weeks notice before any grade level comes back to that grade level. So before we go into the next one, we're just about ready to actually go into the question and answer period right now. But before we do, I'm going to share my screen and just show you where to find some of these resources and information on the website so you can easily find them. All right, great. So on our homepage, you can find this Return to School tab right up here. I've already clicked on it, so that's what you're looking at here. So putting regular updates here, that return to in-person learning video. I've got all of our videos that we've created so far on here. It's taking just a second to load. So if you haven't watched it already, we did, and I think it was in December we released this, and this is great to maybe show your children as well, so that they can get a visual picture and start to prepare if they're planning on doing in-person learning of what school might look like, both going into the school, what their classroom might look like, what the hallways might look like. Towards the end, there are some great little very brief demonstration videos on proper hand washing and how to handle your mask. Those are part of this. It's in English, Spanish, and Russian. Or if you wanted to just go straight to those demonstration videos and review some techniques, perhaps, we also have those available here just as their own little snippets as well, just 30 to 60-second little videos on how to do those things. There's also on the same website a family guide. Again, there's been, I know, a lot of information coming your way over the last year. So that's why I'm taking just a moment to show you where to find all of this information here. So family guide, and we have it broken up into sections. Again, you can go back and look and review. If you have a question, it may be covered in here. Quite likely it probably is. And then we have kind of an archive of our planning that happened last spring and into the summer. So we also have some handy links over here, including the Department of Health decision tree that Dr. Brunelson mentioned, and some other handy things that you can reference here. This is also the section where we'll add the COVID-19 activity in our district will also live on this webpage. So now that I've shown you that, I'm going to give everybody a chance to hop in here. Let me just do a real quick reshare. So the way the questions and answers will work tonight is, now you heard a whole lot of information and you probably had some questions perhaps coming in. And if those questions were answered, here's your chance. So we're going to use something called Thought Exchange. You can, in just a minute, I'll show you how you can get on. You can ask questions, you can make comments, observations. It doesn't have to be a question, but it certainly can. You can ask as many as you want or make as many thoughts or comments as you would like. And then when you're done with that stage, you can move on to the next part, which is looking at what your fellow participants have also shared. And you'll get a chance to rate those. So the more stars you give somebody else's comment or question means that you have a high level of agreement with that. Lower stars obviously means maybe less agreement, or it didn't resonate with you as much. So in just a minute here, I'm going to show you how to get on. I'll also paste the link into the chat box so you can click on a link. I'm going to show you here. You can also, if you have a phone, you can scan this QR code that's going to come up here any second. There it is. So you got this QR code you can scan with a phone if you like. You can go to the website and put in the code, or let me get the link for you and I will put it in to the chat. And then you can go, I'll start the timer here. We'll have 5 minutes. I'm going to let you have a pretty quiet 5 minutes so you can really think and focus on your questions and thoughts, and then reading others and rating those. I'll give you a 1-minute warning. We'll close it. And then we have plenty of staff here on to start working away and just answering those questions in order of the most top rated ones. So this is a great way to find out what are the biggest, most burning questions that we are out there, at least in this group here tonight. And then we'll answer as many as we can in the time that we have. All right. So I'll put this link in the chat. You can go ahead and go see if you can get in there. And then I'll start the timer. And in just a minute, you can see, all right, we've already got people in there. So after everybody gets a chance to scan the code if they want to, or get in there, then in just a few seconds, I will go to the next page and you'll begin to see the thoughts and all the little connections and ratings start to happen. All right, I'm going to switch to the next slide. And again, that question is, what remaining questions or thoughts do you have about in-person learning? And I can see those questions and thoughts already coming in. Awesome. I just realized that when I shared the link in the chat box before, it was only to panelists. So I did just put that in there again. If you've been having trouble getting on at all, it's now in the chat box. I did add 1 minute to the timer because I saw that we had some people join into that thought exchange here just in the last 20 to 30 seconds. So that way it'll give everybody a chance to share their questions or thoughts. The last 30 seconds. So go ahead and wrap up your last comment or question or your last couple of ratings. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and close it so we can have a stable list of questions now. Kind of interesting to see things kind of move around as people rate different comments and thoughts. So again, I mentioned that we have several staff here available to answer questions. And while we were doing the thought exchange, we had several more join us. So it's perfect timing. So starting with Bruce, can we go around and just the people who just joined, can you introduce yourself and your position with the district?
Yes, I'm Bruce Holbert, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Operations.
Thanks, Bruce. Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather Taoyik, Deputy Superintendent.
And Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy Steigerwald, Director of Transportation and Safety for the district.
And Annie?
Good evening. I'm Annie Johnson, Executive Director of Elementary Education.
Thanks for joining us. They're coming fresh from another meeting, so I'm really glad that you were able to join us. Perfect timing. All right, well, starting at the top here, and I just want to mention, by the way, that we'll get through as many questions and comments as we can, but the neat thing about Thought Exchange is that this is all saved. We have access to all of these questions and comments and can go through them after the fact. So I just want you to know, if we don't get to answering your question tonight, just know that it is still there and we will look through those and try to incorporate as many as we can into website FAQs, future communications, things for us to figure out for the next round. So it's very useful and it's very helpful for us. So thank you for taking the time to participate. All right, top question. Should there be a positive case in a classroom, what is the process for notifying parents of other students? So this one probably is, I'm going to look at Cindy, and if you want to bounce this to somebody else, you can. But Cindy, do you feel like you could take this one on?
I sure can. Yeah, you bet. Thank you. So obviously, yeah, we balance the need for confidentiality also with the need for safety. So we are following the guidance from Snohomish Health District, and we have created response protocol for tracking. We will collaborate with them to determine if there's a close contact, and then close contacts will be notified either by letter or personal phone call.
Thanks, Cindy. If you chose to return and your child gets sick, will he or she be allowed to join the remote class until they are cleared to return to the classroom? This might be a Cindy question as well. Do you want to take this one on as well?
This would be a Bruce question.
Okay, thanks for stepping up, Bruce. Can you talk to us about returning and remote?
Yeah, so if a student has to quarantine out of a class for 10 days, that his classroom teacher or her classroom teacher will be responsible for the student. We don't have a default that the student's going to switch to some other remote class, and the teacher will provide the work and the instruction as they typically would if a kid were out sick.
Great, thank you. The next one is, when will we know the status of our teachers, whether they are returning or staying remote? Bruce, do you want to take this one too?
Yes, parents, grade 2 parents will be notified this week. I believe it's late Friday afternoon or early evening of their child's assignment. And then K1 students, we are starting that process early next week to reconfigure those classes. And so those parents of kindergartners and first graders will find out much later.
Perfect, thanks. What is the plan if there is a COVID-19 positive case in my child's classroom? And then sort of a secondary question or comment here is the data from Europe and Israel indicates that the new COVID-19 variation is a higher risk for children. Is there a chance to revert to virtual only? I'm going to assume and interpret this question as they mean it on a classroom by classroom kind of basis if there's one case in a classroom. Is that Bruce or Annie?
Well, I'll speak to it.
Okay.
If there is a need for the class to quarantine, we will be prepared to have the whole class revert to remote because they will have devices at school as well as home. And the teacher will be prepared to shift their class from in-person to remote for whatever period of time is necessary.
Thank you. I think you answered this one already, Bruce, about when first graders will find out. What happens if a child or teacher develops symptoms? And again, I'm going to add my own interpretation to this just for clarity of the answer is I'm going to assume that they mean during the school day. So Cindy?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take this one. So if a staff member develops symptoms throughout the day, they will notify the COVID site supervisor immediately, and they will be removed and substitute, or someone will come into the classroom. And then we will also follow cleaning or disinfecting protocol. If a student develops symptom, then we have a COVID response team, and the student will be escorted to a care room. They will have an additional mask, a surgical mask put on, which raises the PPE level. And then we have nurses or healthcare paraeducators to help in monitoring the student and making contact with the families until you can come and pick your child up.
Perfect. Thank you. This next one, I'm going to ask Dr. Brynildson if she wants to weigh in on this one. Can you change your mind about attending?
So I'm assuming this means the student has chosen to come to in-person learning. So second grader chose to be in person, and then they want to switch to remote. So I would say that the student could switch to remote if we have room. And so we have larger class sizes in remote, and in person, remember the class sizes are 15. And when they're remote, they can go to, what is it, Bruce, 20, 25, 26?
25, 26.
25. So we have more capacity to take students in a remote setting. So, but I will say, if the child chooses to go remote, they might have to go remote at another building. It just depends on space and capacity. So another building can sound scary, but you're in a virtual environment. So you'd still be with the same grade level. Bruce, would you add anything to that?
No, I think that covers it.
Thank you. If a student repeatedly takes a mask off or refuses to put one on, how will that be handled? Annie, do you want to talk about that one?
Sure. As students come back to school, we know that they have varying degrees of working with masks and wearing masks for long periods of time. So we feel it's important that as a school, we teach students about mask wearing, how to do that. We practice it, we reinforce it. There is an expectation that students wear masks. So we will continue to reinforce it and practice it. But if there's a real strong refusal not to wear it over and over again, even after teaching the child, the principal will probably be calling the parent to have a conversation about whether the in-person setting is the best for the child if they're not willing to wear a mask.
Thank you. What happens if a student of staff or students' family member tests positive for COVID? This seems like it might be a Cindy question.
It does. So if there is a positive test case in a home for students or staff, then we follow the close contact quarantining rules. So first person contact to a positive case requires quarantining for 14 days. And so we will follow up with the family or the staff member to discuss those dates and let them know when they can return.
Thank you. This next one, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they might be asking what measures would be taken if a student got COVID-19 positive. And I think we've already answered that, but I'll just give an opportunity. Cindy, do you have anything else that you would add here for measures if a student became COVID-19 positive?
No, I think the only thing is just to reiterate that if anybody becomes COVID-19 positive, we will follow our COVID response for tracking for close contacting and then doing quarantine or isolation as needed.
Great, thank you. When will we find out our children's teacher? Again, that's second grade for this Friday evening. And then we are still working on the K1 data, so that'll be after. If my child has to quarantine, will they be able to join an online class or just have to miss days of school? Bruce, you want to take this one?
You assume I was paying attention as opposed to reading.
Let me read it again. If my child has to quarantine, will they be able to join an online class or just have to miss days of school?
Yeah, this relates to the previous question that they wouldn't automatically join another online class. The classroom teacher would be responsible for providing the instruction and the work to be done at home.
Great, thank you. This next question I think is a good one for Dr. Brynolfsson. What are the qualifiers for keeping the tentative start dates for kindergarten and first grade?
Yep, that's a great question. We decided to put the word tentative because of how much change happens so frequently, which is what I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. So we just want to make sure that second grade goes well. And we're going to wait 2 weeks between the first full grade level that returns, which is second grade, and the next grade level, which is first grade. So we just put, I always usually say hopeful, tentative, but we put that on ourselves just to make sure second grade goes okay. So it's just another cautious safety point, if that makes sense. I don't know if you want to clarify what I just said, Diana, or if that made sense.
Well, it made sense to me that we're planning on it and we're hopeful to keep with it. But again, that's assuming all goes well with with second grade coming back, right? Okay, great. How is class size reduction happening if many students sign up? So I'm thinking either Patty or Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about the survey results and numbers of students in classes? I know when I put it out there for two people, nobody's jumping at it. So I guess I'll ask Heather first and then you can decide just for clarity.
Well, first and foremost, I know that the information was shared that we will have class sizes of up to 15 for in-person learning. So right now, I'll pass it to Patty to sort of share more about where, we're seeing some of the trends. But we will manage that through, our staffing process and ensuring that we are able to meet the needs of our families first and foremost in that regard. So that's where we are as well. We do have a lot of students that also signed up and prefer being remote, and some teachers are in that mode as well. So Patty, do you want to share any highlights?
This kind of goes back to Dr. Brynelson's answer as well, that as the students fill out the survey, we're trying to meet students' requests as best we can. And then if a student signs up later, more than likely, they will need to be into the remote setting because that seems to be where most of our openings are because we are capped at that 15.
Great, thank you. Have all teachers finalized their decisions for in-person and live stream with the same group of students already? I'm going to say I believe so, but I'm looking to Bruce to clarify.
Well, I'll defer to Patty.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I would jump in that the answer for second grade is accurate. And
second grade for sure.
Second grade for sure. And then kindergarten and first grade, we haven't started processing that data and matching up students' choices to the family choices. So yes, on second grade, more to come on K1 and 2.
And just I think somebody already said it earlier, but when we send that information out to families of second graders this Friday, it will include their teacher assignment, their schedule, and so you'll have this information. You'll know if you were able to keep the same teacher or not this Friday when you get that message. Yep. Anything else to add, Patty? No, good. Okay. Okay, this one's a little nuanced compared to some that we had a bit ago. If a student has a symptom, what is the process for returning to school? And what plan is there for continued learning while we have to be home? I believe we've answered the second one. Bruce, do you want to go ahead and jump in on that part?
Yeah, I want to talk to the first part of that question. So it could be a situation where a student has demonstrated symptoms at school, or the student is at home with symptoms. You will get guidance. If a student has symptoms at school, you will get guidance from the school nurse as to what needs to happen, what's the timeline for the student to be able to return to school. And also, I just met with nurses this morning to outline a process because we really have to track our students who are ill. And it may not be because of COVID, but we can't just have students come back to school without having information about that. So we are going to have a process where we're going to have kind of a re-entry interview with parents before they send their children back to school. So we're confident that they're not showing symptoms of COVID, and make sure that we can provide parents with clear guidance as to any additional days the student needs to stay out. So more to follow on that.
Thanks. Timely information. Thanks, Bruce. I believe we've answered the next two about what happens if a student or staff tests positive and what happens if a student cannot keep on a mask. And I'm going to assume the same answer for cannot maintain physical distance that Dr. Johnson already shared with us. What will happen to students who will, okay, we got that one. This is a good one. All right, this is a Cindy question. What types of face coverings are acceptable?
We're going to actually kick that one to Karen.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Karen.
Nope, that's fine. Cloth face masks are acceptable. The surgical type of mask, the 3-ply disposable mask is acceptable. I'm not sure beyond that what the question might be wondering, but that's, those are all acceptable.
So things like, we know that there are some that are not acceptable, right? So for
Oh,
instance,
yes.
the bandana
Bandanas,
or neck gaiters are not
Correct.
acceptable.
correct.
And just to
Uh,
reiterate too, that we will have extras available at schools on buses should a student need another kind of mask or need an additional mask, correct?
That's correct.
Sorry, was there anything else you wanted to add, Karen? I jumped in there.
Nope. Nope, you got it.
Can I
Do you
just
know if
follow
pro-
up, Diane, can I just
Yeah.
follow up a little bit on the mask wearing?
Mhm.
Because I know that's come up from parents in a number of different ways. And parents are very concerned about, their students being safe at school. So when it comes to mask wearing, our expectations are going to be really high for students to adhere to that. Now, granted, if we have a kindergartner, we're going to treat the kindergartner, have a little bit more patience to train and teach that student. But if a student quickly shows that they're not cooperating and we're not making headway on that, we won't hesitate to remove them to a remote assignment because the safety of everybody at school is our responsibility, and we take that seriously.
Thanks, Bruce. I believe we pretty much touched on the next few. How soon will teachers be reassigned? I think we've already talked about that. This was a good one. Karen, you might be able to speak to this one a little bit. What will drop off and pickup look like? And maybe between you and Dr. Johnson, we could answer this one. And I think this will probably be our last or second to last question.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Dr. Johnson to provide an example of this one, because I know more about the loading and the getting them there, but I think she's more familiar with the dropping off and picking up part at the school site.
So I think Cindy Steigerwald mentioned earlier that we're going to have staggered arrivals for buses and parents, and they're going to be in separate areas. Walking areas will have a designated place where an adult is supervising. Parent drop-off will have some supervisors, and buses will too, and they're going to be staggered. So when students get off the bus, they'll do it one bus at a time. The bus driver will take the student's temperature, and the student will have the attestation that's required for daily from parents to attest to the child's wellness to the staff member there as they get off the bus. And then they'll be escorted into their classroom. It's going to be very close to the start time of the school day. It's really important that parents recognize that they should not drop off students too early, because we're going to be waiting till about 5 minutes just before school starts before we start unloading students, so that we don't have a congregation of students waiting in line. You'll get more information from your school and your principals about your arrival and dismissal procedure specific to your building. But our goal is to keep kids safe, to ensure that they are going into the building in a manner that maintains social distancing and works so that kids can get in safely with masks, on time, ready to learn.
Thank you. Well, that was a good way to end it here. We are at 6:30. I want to make sure I'm respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the thought exchange and our answering. But again, we have all of your questions here recorded. We can still go through these and glean your comments and your questions for future communications. So with that, Dr. Brynolfsson, any closing comments you'd like to make?
Just like to echo with what I started with, which is thank you for all you've done to support your students. I know there's some staff out there, so thank you for what you do for students as well. And we appreciate your thoughtful questions and taking the time to be with us tonight.
Thank you. Good night.